Wow, right? Good morning, NCC Trinity. Many of you know that my father was a minister and an NCC minister too. And I know that if he were here today, after that amazing choir anthem, he would say, "You can't preach after that, there ain't no preach in you." Thank you so much for that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, we've been a long time coming getting to this place, haven't we? And I know you've been waiting a while. So this is the day. If I could take a point of privilege just to acknowledge a few people that are here, that if you come here regularly, you probably don't know. First of all, I want to thank my dear friends, and I also think of them as family, Reverend Katie Holmes and Reverend Elder Darlene Thomas. I'll tell you on another day what I really call them, but for today. And also some dear friends from who live now, I think, in St. Clearwater? Palmer. Yeah, okay. They live here in Florida now, but they used to be in St. Louis and attend the church there. And I also bought their home from them in St. Louis when they moved to Florida. Now I have to sell it, I guess. Depending on what you decide today. Anyway, Lee and Jen Elam Carter, thank you so much. We had no idea that they would make this trip today, and I'm so grateful to them. And then, last but of course not least at all, is my beautiful partner, Kate Savage. She's also here with us today. So it's Advent, a very important season in the Christmas year. And it's also an important day in the life of this church, amen? Amen. And as it turns out, an important day in my life, too. It seems in many ways that that's a lot to put in one second. That we need to be honoring of the fact that it is Advent, and we also need to honor the fact that something special is happening in the life of the church. And so I thought, that seems like a tall order, but the more I thought about it, the more it seemed to me that it's perfect. That actually for this moment, perhaps God has ordained a time where we not only look for the Christ child to look for the one who will make our lives better, but we also are looking for what God is birthing in us, right here at Church of the Trinity. And so perhaps it all turns out to be perfect. Please pray with me. Holy One, we give you thanks for this day, and I pray now that the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts might rise up to meet you, and that in the greeting of us you will be pleased. May it be so in your many names. Amen. Well, it's the season for shopping, right? And I have to confess, I love to shop. Sometimes I almost lose my lesbian card over the fact that I love to shop. And it turns out I love to watch the way that other people shop, too. It's fascinating, isn't it? You just go to the mall and sit down and just watch people. People have all sorts of ways that they go about shopping. For example, my friend Katie, who is here, is amazing when it comes to shopping and spotting a sale. She can sniff out the most obscure piece of clothing on a rack, and it almost always turns out to be on sale. My partner, Kate, she's a bit of a one-item shopper. She knows what she's looking for, and she looks until she finds it. She rarely buys an outfit all at once. She's just looking for a piece, and if she's buying you a gift, the gift will have her undivided attention, and it will be perfectly chosen just for you. My dad was what I would call a surprise shopper. You just never knew when the mood was going to hit him. And he would just go out at the most obscure, ununderstandable kind of times to shop. And his most favorite time to be a surprise shopper was on Christmas Eve. He loved to wait till the very end to go shopping. I think as a child, I am just blessed and grateful that I managed to have Christmas based on that. So we all have different ways that we shop. My friend Mary Ann, who couldn't be here today, but is here in spirit, is a frugal shopper, right, Candy? I mean, after all, if one pair of black pants will do, then why would you buy two? Or if you can wear 3 blouses with the same pair of pants, why would you buy more than 1 pair of pants? Or if you find a perfect, beautiful pair of earrings that you love, but you don't really need them, then why in the world would you buy them? So no matter our individual approaches to shopping, we're all out shopping this season. We're looking, trying to get the gifts that are part of participating in Christmas. And almost all of us will find ourselves in a mall sometime this Christmas. Now, as you think about going to the mall, did you know that most malls are designed to have bends and turns in them? Because shoppers typically won't walk towards something that is more than 1/10 of a mile away. Or did you know that floor plans in malls are disorienting for a good reason, or at least they tell us it's a good reason, and that is that so shoppers can't make a quick exit. Or did you know that escalators in malls are strategically placed to force shoppers to pass the maximum number of storefronts? Here's a good one. Did you know that women will buy more if they hear their heels clicking on polished, hard surfaces? For that reason, mall designers most often use hard surfaces to cover the hallways of the malls. Now, I'm thinking in this room that may not be confined. So let's make that a gender fluid comment. And let's listen to everybody's heels on the floor of the mall. With all of that going on, perhaps it is time to stop in the season of Advent and take a lesson from the wise ones who followed a star to find the one who would make their lives better. Perhaps traveling successfully requires that we learn to navigate by the stars and not be so turned and tossed by the manipulation and the luring that is part of our consumer culture. Maybe it requires that when landmarks and even the landscape are changing all the time, successful navigation requires fixed points. That's why seafaring people have always navigated by the stars. It's why they have always looked for the fixed points that they could depend on and count on for them to get to the place they're going. Now, even with GPS, if you look at the picture on your GPS, you get a fixed point where you are and where you want to be. So fixed points are important. And the question is, what are those fixed points for us? Not only on this important Sunday and in this important season of Advent, but always. What are the fixed points? I think perhaps if we go to the manger, we get our best chance at understanding what the fixed points are. So first there is compassion. You know, that innkeeper didn't judge the unwed pregnant Mary, but rather he gave her a place to have a baby. There was a certain amount of compassion displayed by an innkeeper who was looking at a stranger, and there was no apparent solution to the problem because the inn was full, and yet, rather than judge or give himself an out because she was an unwed mother, he found a way to give her a space. And then there's generosity. The wise ones, they brought their precious gifts and left them at the manger. And they left them at the manger of an illegitimate baby. See, it's easy for us to be generous about things that aren't hard. But it's much more challenging to be generous when we actually have to do something like acknowledge an illegitimate baby with the very best that we have. There's justice. You know, at the manger, there was no royalty, there was no privilege, there was no advantage. The one born with the least is the one who changed the world. There was inclusion. Look at all the people who gathered around. The shepherds, they were a motley bunch. You know about shepherds, right? There were guests at the inn, unknown to us, but it was full, so they were there. There were wise men. There was an illegitimate baby. There was a pregnant teenager. People from all walks of life gathered around the future. And then finally there was joy. And we know this because listen to the scripture about it. The angels rejoiced. The shepherds made their way to the manger and shouted songs of joy. Mary took all of these things and pondered them in her heart. Everyone who found their way there were filled with joy. So we have compassion, generosity, inclusion, justice, and joy as fixed points. And my guess is we all love the idea of those fixed points, right? That's exactly it. We all love the idea of these fixed points. And we probably could agree that they are perfect stars to guide us. But often, just like at the mall, we're lured away. We're lured away from these fixed points because we get manipulated, life happens, situations change, and we get lured away. And we check out, we go to sleep, we get numb, and then we can no longer see our fixed points. And unfortunately, when we can't see the fixed points, we become afraid. And when we become afraid, fear takes over. Now, this is a human predicament. Most of us find ourselves fearing things a lot, if we are honest. And we come to church on Sunday, at least some of us, to be reminded of these fixed points that guide us. And hopefully we don't feel so afraid, but then life happens to us once we leave here, and we forget how to navigate the stars. Now listen, I'm not naive, and I hope you won't be either. That we can hold on to these fixed points all the time. Or that our given predicament around fear is something that will never ever happen again if you can just find your fixed points. I don't think that's true. Because it's a human predicament. What I think we could do, though, is to see if there is a way that we can be reminded of the fixed points. If there's a way we can be reminded of God's promises to us and a relationship with God that helps us to, at least from time to time, get connected to the fixed points. I think we find the simplicity of that relationship in the Old Testament scripture that we just heard read. And it was from the book of Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah, as the reading we heard, was a young man, and he was a prophet. He was sort of a prophet in training, where we picked him up in the scripture. One who could see the future and whose job it was to share what the future would hold for his people. This particular story seems to indicate that God was working with Jeremiah, sort of this prophet in training, trying to help him. And he was throwing some training things at him, some testing things at Jeremiah. And he was trying to teach him to be faithful and to trust. And so one day, God was going to reveal something very challenging to Jeremiah, something challenging that Jeremiah would have to tell his people. And so he wanted to test Jeremiah a little bit. So God said, Jeremiah, what do you see? Jeremiah said, I see the limb of an almond tree, the branch of an almond tree. And God said, that is exactly right. Now, that might seem unimportant, but when you look at the almond branch and what it means, it is very, very essential to our learning how to navigate the stars. You see, the almond branch was significant because translated in Hebrew, the almond tree means the awakening tree. And so there is the invitation to wake up, to pay attention, to see what's really going on around you. And that's the invitation out of the numbness, out of our sleepiness, out of our checking out. There's the invitation, as Jeremiah was noticing, to just pay attention, because in the relationship with God, in relationship to being able to navigate the stars, we have to stand alone. You've heard, I imagine, the phrase, or the old saying that says, "My ship came in, but I was at the airport." That's what it looks like to be asleep. Is that it actually all comes in and we're at the wrong place because we weren't paying attention. Someone else really wise once said that if you want to know more, notice more. If you want to know more, notice more, but you have to be awake and alert and believing that something is there, anticipating that something is there in order for you to even know God showed up. And then also the almond tree tells us something about fear. The almond tree, in the region where it grows, is the very first tree to bloom. And so in the late winter, the almond tree actually shoots out its first flowers. And so before all the other trees begin to bloom, the almond tree shows up and reminds us that spring is on the way. It's a precursor to say life and blooming and flowers and sunshine are all on the way. Now, I know you all think you live in Florida, so it's that way all the time. But where the almond tree grows, that's not true. And so it reminds us that spring is on the way. But more important, it reminds you and me that in the winters of our lives, God shows up early. God shows up early, just like the almond branch, to prepare a way for us. God's already there, preparing for us to unwrap a perfect gift. God is showing up early. Don't you love that? It's just beautiful. God's showing up early, so God is there to remind us who we are. And God has showed up early to say, don't forget the fixed points. Don't forget the stars. I think that at Church of the Trinity, certainly in my life sometimes, I forget that God is showing up early just to prepare a way for me and you and for us. And one of the ways that God shows up early is to remind us of who we are. Do you remember? Do you remember who we are? We are God's beloved. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are the people that God knows the number of hairs on our head. That's easier for God for some of you than others. We are the people who are loved beyond reason and without condition. We are the people who were, before we were formed in our mother's womb, God had something very special in mind for us. That's who we are. And God shows up early every time to remind us that no matter what else you think you are, that is the most important part of who you are. God has shown up early to gift us. And the only question is whether or not we will be awakened to see it. Christmas will be here soon. I don't know about you, I'm not quite ready. The stars are shining and showing us the way. And all we have to do is stay awake, stay alert, and come out of our numbness. To illustrate this and to close, I want to share a story with you. It's a true story, but it's going to sound like it's not a true story, so I'll just give you that warning right up front. How many of you have been to New York City? So you know that New York City is a hustling, bustling place. It's easy to get lost. And especially if you're not accustomed to it, It is a very loud place. It's a very busy place. It's a very crowded place. It's very hard to know your way around place. It's all those things. So many years ago now, I was in New York City on business, and I was in my hotel, and I was planning to meet a friend of mine who actually was more like a colleague because we were doing business together. And she was going to meet me. We were going to walk to dinner. Well, I'd already learned that week that trying to get a cab, if you're a Southern girl, this wasn't going to happen. I can't tell you how many people jumped right in the seat of the cab in front of me. I'd already turned around to sit down. Or how many people swore at me because I was trying to get a cab too. And of course, I'm supposed to be polite, so I just stepped back. Well, I couldn't get anywhere. So I finally did figure out that if I would tell the bellman that I needed a cab, it was much better to let him or her do it for me. And so that's how I got on. So I knew New York to be, troubling for me at best. So I had my friend meet me in front of the hotel, and we began to make our way in the late afternoon to where we were going to dinner. And if you've been in New York, you know that at rush hour like that, not only are the cars everywhere and the horns are honking, but you're like 4 or 5 deep on the sidewalk next to each other. Now, all those people right in front of you and right behind you. So we're trying to make our way. It's loud and crazy. And my friend turns to me and said, "Did you hear that?" Seriously? Which thing are you asking me about? And so she said, "Oh, fine, just run our belt loose, let's go here." So she took us to the end of the block, and then we crossed the street. And at the corner of the street that we come to is a big concrete planter that has a tree. And she leans over to the planter and she moves the leaves that are there out of the way. And right there, sitting on the soil of that concrete planter, was a cricket. That was she, by the way, asking me if I heard. And I said, "What? What is this? How did you know that cricket was there? I mean, is this just a pet cricket you see? What is going on here? How did you know that cricket was here?" And she said, "Well, let me show you, Lily." She dug into her purse and took out a handful of coins, and she threw them onto the sidewalk. Of course, they bounced around and made noise. And do you know that immediately everybody that was walking stopped and made a circle around her. In the midst of all of that noise, there was no mistaking that people heard the coins hit the sidewalk. You can't make this stuff up. And so I said, "Wow." She said, "You see, Lily, the truth here is, it's not about the noise and what you hear. It's about what you're listening for. It's about what you're listening for." It's hard sometimes for us to listen when there's so much noise all around. So it's hard for us to stay awake and be present and notice. It's hard for us to keep the focal points sorted out. But my prayer for us during this season and on this particular day is that we will tune our ears to what we should be listening for. Because the messages are clear. The messages are ones that God showed up early to tell us. And so listening is critical. So I want you, if you would, to join with me because it's such an important thing. And an affirmation that we know God has showed us. And that we know the messages will be clear. It's a favorite scripture of mine. And I just want us to repeat it together to close up our affirmation that God is indeed with us. The scripture is, God who began a good work in us will be faithful to complete it. No matter what has happened, God, who began a good work in us, will be faithful to complete it. Say it with me. God, who began a good work in us, will be faithful to complete it. Now say it like you mean it. God, who began a good work in us, will be faithful to complete it. Try it one more time. God, who began a good work in us, will be faithful to complete it. May it be so, and amen.